Hey folks, Daryl here with a quick preamble before we talk US men's national team roster. It's just a reminder that we recorded 2 episodes very close together in the last day or so. So if you're looking for our Premier League review show where we spot patterns from the first 3 games in the Premier League, that is the Monday show. It is the show previous to this. I just want to make sure that you don't miss it. All right, on with today's show. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show, the Tuesday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who is ready for his international break. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Such as it is, I'm ready for our international break.
You actually don't get a break for international
Not so much, no.
weekend. You just have to work harder.
Yeah, exactly.
It is kind of our thing though, right? Because I feel like with international break, we get to focus on 1 or 2 specific games instead of trying to cover everything.
All the things.
All the things. And the things this time are the US national team has called up 26 players for the World Cup qualifiers against St. Vinny's, the Vinci Heat, and Trinidad and Tobago.
I believe we call them the Cousins, but that's fine.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The Cousins, why?
Cousin Vinny's.
I forgot about that. Yes. And England, Sam Allardyce has called up his first squad for the World Cup qualifier away to Slovakia.
And it's an abomination.
It is not.
No, but I'm just being the English press.
Oh, yeah. No, we're in the optimism phase right now.
Oh, right. I always forget this, yeah.
We're also going to answer a couple of listener questions on today's show. Shall we start with that US roster first?
I don't see why not.
So the complicated thing I think a few people have maybe stumbled with is the fact that your squads for World Cup qualifiers are 23 players and Klinsmann has called up 26 players.
Right.
Can you explain why?
I think I can. I'm still not sure of the international rules in terms of declaring a roster and maybe if some of these players are suddenly going to have to pick up injuries to make way for others. But essentially, you've got 2 players suspended in the form of Michael Bradley and Orozco Fiscal. Michael Orozco, excuse me. And then you've got Clint Dempsey doesn't matter, but you've got Jermaine Jones out with injury, but still in the squad. So it seems like maybe those 3 might get a rest when the U.S. travels to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And then when they come back, maybe those guys will be a bit more fit. It won't be suspended anymore, and then you'll have those 3 included at the expense of 3 other players.
3 people are going to miss out on the big Trinidad game, I'm pretty sure. Maybe only 2 people, depends on Jermaine Jones' fitness. You mentioned Clint Dempsey.
Yes.
Clint
I said doesn't matter, and what I meant by that,
we know
to
Dempsey
clarify.
We know Dempsey matters, right?
It's simply that he wasn't ever going to be included in this roster because of the heart condition, the irregular heartbeat that's being dealt with at the moment. So he is out for Seattle, out for the U.S. as well.
It's kind of a big thing for the U.S. because it's hard to imagine a U.S. attack without Clint Dempsey right now.
And I think it's one of the main reasons, not to go too deep on this already, but why Chris Wondolowski was included in this roster. I think you want, if you're Jurgen Klinsmann, you want a veteran presence who's been there before, who can help youngsters come through, can maybe come in late, be that substitute that we saw him be in the Copa America, at times Copa America Centenario. So I think that's part of the reason why.
Or he could start in a semi-final against Argentina and give away free kicks that lead to goals.
Or that. I was maybe actively avoiding talking about that. I'm thinking about the one moment when he broke up a quick counterattack opportunity off a set piece. That's my one Wando highlight from the Copa America Centenario.
The forwards we do have on the roster in Dempsey's absence are Josie Altidore. He's in form and he's back. He is banging in goals left, right and centre for Toronto FC. Jordan Morris is on the roster. Rubio Rubin is on the roster of FC Utrecht fame. And also Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. Chris Wondolowski and everybody's Copa America favourite, Bobby Wood.
And it's a weird reality we live in now where, based on the responses I've seen, and I am not even going to try to claim that I've watched a ton of Chris Wondolowski at club level this season, he seems to not be in great form. And it seems like this is the first time that maybe he's in the worst form of the strikers that are listed in the roster.
Right.
Because Josie Altidore is tearing it up in MLS. Jordan Morris has obviously caught fire a bit. We've seen him score
just last night.
Bobby Wood scored on his Bundesliga debut for Hamburg and looked solid throughout. Rubio Rubin back into the Utrecht team, not necessarily starting every single game, but back from injury and looking very much involved in this season. So 4 strikers in form that I expect to be doing things this coming weekend.
So Klinsmann said that if all goes well in the first qualifying game, that is assuming we beat St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and assuming that results go our way in the Trinidad-Guatemala game, which I think is a Trinidad win, would basically guarantee the US advances, because then Guatemala can't catch us, even if we lose to Trinidad, that he would experiment with some youth. And I think that means that Rubio Rubin's getting into the game against Trinidad if it's not a high-pressure situation.
Yes, I think so. That said...
Do you feel okay with that? I feel a little weird about that, because that's sort of taken for granted by including him.
It is and it isn't.
You know
I think you can take for granted getting a win against St. Vincent, but I think you can also, if you look at what we talked about, if you've got Orozco suspended, you're probably not going to bring him. If you've got Bradley suspended, you're probably not going to bring him. If you've got Jermaine Jones, who hasn't played since July 4th and is still recovering, maybe you don't bring him. Then you have Rubio Rubin on that bench, and if you're up 4-0 against the Vinci Heat, you can bring on Rubio Rubin and give him his senior cap, I guess he's had maybe a couple senior caps, already, but get him involved, get him back into the national team fold. And then you necessarily don't have to play him against Trinidad, which is a much tougher game.
And maybe when we get closer to the game against the My Cousin Vinny's, we'll talk about who we would like to see starting up front. Someone in contention for that has to be Bobby Wood. We saw a good chunk of Bobby Wood's game for Hamburg against Ingolstadt. It was his official Bundesliga Hamburg debut.
Yeah.
Bobby Wood, alone up front, 3 attackers underneath him, scored on his debut.
He sure did.
Get in there, Bobby Wood.
And it's so I saw it initially described as oh, that's a Bundesliga 2 goal right there. And I thought they were being serious. I thought it was. I think it was sarcasm because it's such a good goal. I assumed it was going to be a tap in or a scrappy fighting in the box goal. And what it is, it's a long ball from the goalkeeper.
Ray Adler.
It looks at first like a flicked on header. In reality, it's just both the players who go up to try to win that header miss.
It bounces over Gregoric and the other defender. Yeah.
And then it's into the path of Bobby Wood, who does a very good job to head it so that it continues into his path, but in the way that he can then take ownership of the ball rather than just have to do an out and out sprint. And he does some bodying, and that's the most impressive part for me.
Well, I would even say it's not even into the path of Bobby Wood. I think the ball is travelling, and Bobby Wood travels into the path of the ball. And he just, he gets there first. Is it Matip, the defender? Yeah. Not the Liverpool Matip. It's a different Matip. It's a Cameroonian German who plays centre-back for Ingolstadt.
Marvin, I think?
Yeah, Marvin Matip. Would make sure he gets his muscly Hawaiian body there first, gets ahead to it to nod it ahead of himself, and then he really does put his hand on Matip's shoulder, gets away with it, holds him back a little bit, then gets his shot off.
Yeah. And gets a shot off from 25 yards out and just gets his hips around it, but does a good job to have that low center of gravity to body off Matip, but still have the pace, but still have the technical ability to finish. It's a lovely goal, and that's what I mean when I say he's in very good form, or at least feeling very confident with his club.
And I think now I understand the Bundesliga 2 reference. It's that it's not like a crafted goal. It's kind of direct and muscles.
Yep, direct and muscles, but that should work against the Peshies, so we'll see how it goes.
So since we're talking about Bobby Wood, what did you make of his new surroundings and his new setup at Hamburg? Is he I know he scored this one goal after 30 minutes, they ended up tying the game 1-1. Is he primed for success there?
I think he is primed for success in the sense that he seemed very confident. He seemed very assured in his positioning, making smart runs, making himself available, dropping back at times. But I also felt like they hadn't quite hit their rhythm, Hamburg, in the sense that sometimes he would drop back and then they would sprint forward and just play across into the box, and he would then be trying to get on the end of it, but he'd be 20 yards behind it.
Is that his fault, or is that the rest of the team's fault?
I think it's the rest of the team's fault. Maybe that's biased there, but I think it's a lot of him dropping back to help with possession, and then when you drop in to help with possession, and then all of a sudden they just run down the wing and cross. Yeah, it sort of is well, no, I'm not there anymore. It reminds me, I was 12 once, and I just put my head. I was too. And I put my head down, dribbled to the end line, and crossed, and then was "Who's there?" And my coach was "Yeah, that's not how it works. You got to pick your head up and find somebody.
It's your job to look."
Yeah, and I don't think that they did as good of a job without his teammates of finding him.
So Alan Halilovic, the big signing that Hamburg made, was not. It didn't start this game, but Kostic, the other big signing they made, played on the left, the Serbian. I think he's part of the problem you're talking about, right? This is a very, very talented player who maybe isn't always using his talents in the wisest possible way.
He's a talented attacking player, certainly. We saw him get beat in a 30-second period, I think 5 times in a row. Not great defensively, and so I think
you can see why he was part of a relegated. You can see why he looked good on a relegated team last year, because he probably offers nothing defensively, offers some flashes of something going forward.
Yeah, and so with that, I think that explains partially why Bobby Wood was having to drop back in and try to kind of help out defensively, but help out in terms of alleviating some of that pressure. So I was impressed by him overall, mostly just because he didn't look like the young player like trying to show that he belonged. He looked like the guy's like, I belong. You guys better shape up.
Shall we talk about an American striker starting for a team in Germany who did not make Klinsmann's roster for these World Cup qualifiers?
Sure.
It's Arjo, Aaron Johansson.
Yes.
So not on this roster. Recently back from injury. Started for Werder Bremen against Bayern Munich in the Friday afternoon for us, US Eastern, Bundesliga kickoff game. Didn't look bad, I guess, but didn't really get much of a chance to do anything. I'm trying to think of a way to describe how he played in this game. He was a lone striker attempting to pressurize the entire Bayern Munich back four and midfield on his own.
Yeah,
because the rest of Werder Bremen just dropped deep into their own area, and Johansson was just left to sort of shadow around up top.
The best way I can explain it is like there was one sequence when he applies like half pressure to like the right back, who swings it around to the center back, who swings it around to the center back, who swings it to the left back, and Arjo kind of like turns and starts following the ball, and then looks behind him like, oh, there's no one filling in.
Yep.
Okay, and then like it kind of slowly follows the ball and does what he can, but I'm not going to put that on him.
His whole day. He was like directing pressure, but he's supposed to direct pressure into more pressure. Yeah. And he couldn't do that because none of his Bremen teammates were coming to help him. They were just sitting back, waiting for Bayern to come at them.
Right. So I think that's maybe not the reason why he wasn't included as much as it was. Same thing with Julian Green. I think it's a player who, for different reasons, has all of a sudden gotten in this position where they're either starting or they're on the bench for a team that maybe people weren't expecting them to be. Like Aaron Johansson to all of a sudden be the starter, having recovered from injury. Julian Green to be on that bench, having been Julian Green. I think Jurgen Klinsmann, it makes more sense to kind of leave them where they are, let them train with their club, not risk Aaron Johansson playing a game, flying to the U.S., playing 2 games, flying back, being exhausted for his next club game. Makes more sense. Let him be there. Let him continue to establish himself.
What about Julian Green, though? Because Bayern went 2-0 up very quickly. I think they were 4-0 up after not too long. It looked like a game where Julian Green could have come off the bench for Bayern and got a good 20 minutes, give Lewandowski a rest towards the end. Instead, he sits the whole game. Or is it every week going to be like this for Bayern?
Well, I think, though, the flip side to that is that maybe you give Robert Lewandowski a rest when you've got Champions League coming up and another club game coming up. When you've got the international break, maybe Carlo Ancelotti's not so worried about it for the first week of the season, and you really want to stamp your authority on that game, on that team.
I guess it's not Ancelotti's job to help Julian Green get more minutes so he can get for the US men's national team.
But I think with everyone else going out on international duty, they'll still be training. They're still there. So it means that Julian Green can get further comfortable in the system and not have that like his kind of run of form broken up by all of a sudden going on international duty where he may not get many minutes, if any minutes at all.
Well, since we're talking Bundesliga and we're talking this roster, Christian Pulisic is on this roster. This means that Christian Pulisic is a regular part of the US men's national team now, right? It wasn't just a one-off for the Copa America Centenario. He's going to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There is no more CONCACAF call-up than that. But he was on the bench for Borussia Dortmund this weekend in their win over Mainz. Did not see the field.
Did not see the field.
Is the subject of a transfer bid from Liverpool. And it looks like this was a legit transfer bid.
You can put that in past tense, though, I think, because it looks like that bid has been rejected. It was an £11 million bid, I think 12 million euros, and it appears to have been rejected by Dortmund.
But there are a couple of days to go until the end of the transfer window. So maybe that was like an opening bid to see what was possible.
And I think I like that move more than the rumored Stoke move. Not just because it's Liverpool, not just because it's Klopp, but because I feel like he has maybe more of an opportunity to fit into that system, to play high tempo, high press, high passing kind of soccer. And I think that makes sense. I think I'd still rather him go to a place where I am more confident that he's going to get first team minutes, and I don't think he will.
Leipzig, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the one.
And people may have missed this, but we talked about it a couple of shows ago. Because Pulisic is under 18, he cannot go on loan outside of Germany. Right? Until like after the middle of September when he turns 18, so January at the earliest. But he can go out on loan within Germany. So Leipzig is a realistic loan destination. Liverpool is not. Stoke is not. They're realistic permanent transfer situations, but then you've made a permanent transfer.
But what do we make of Mr. Pulisic's inclusion in this roster?
Well, can I ask you this question via a listener question we got from Leon Schmitz? Leon wanted to know, is it a good idea to call up Pulisic every international break, as he could need the time in Dortmund to get a better chance at more first-team action? Leon says the US doesn't really need him that much right now, as they will be able to do a job anyway. Wondering if this might actually hinder his development as a player. What do you say to that?
I don't think it will hinder his development because I think he's a very, very talented player who's capable of developing all on his own, regardless of like where he is. Whereas I do think for a player like Julian Green, it's much more situational, where it seems almost like a fluke that he's played himself into contention with that Bayern Munich team.
Right.
And you kind of want to continue on that trajectory, not mess anything up or risk, injury or anything like that.
I mean, I would disagree with the part where Leon says the US doesn't really need him because they'll be able to do the job anyway.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that as well.
But we could be in a little bit of trouble here. You don't know. Right? We could beat St. Vincent, but still need a result against Trinidad to qualify. Mm-hmm. Right?
And I would say he's, at this point, at least in the top 5 Americans playing abroad.
Yeah.
Would be one. And I think if you're looking at that, if you've got, I think it's half the roster is coming from Major League Soccer. Thereabouts, maybe it's 16 players.
It is, 13 and 13.
13 and 13, there it is, okay. Then it makes sense that if you're going 13 players from abroad, and if he's in the top 5, then you include him in there because he's one of your best players.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best reason to include people in your national team. That's the most obvious reason.
Right.
You can overthink it beyond that, right? He's good, call him up, get him to play.
And so that's the thing, is that I think it's less about, like, let's see if he can handle it, let's see what he does in this situation. It's more about, he is a regular, he is part of this first team, so he's getting called in. It's no different than, Bradley being called in or another player that's proven himself to be at that level.
Speaking of players proving themselves at that level, Alfredo Morales
should be included.
That's what I think.
Yep.
So we saw him. He was on the Ingolstadt team playing against Bobby Wood. So we got a good look at him playing against Hamburg for Ingolstadt. We saw him a few times last year. I mean, to me, there's no way that he doesn't deserve a spot on this roster. And yet, instead of Alfredo Morales as a defensive midfielder, we have Kyle Beckerman once again. We have an injured Jermaine Jones and a suspended Michael Bradley.
Right. And it doesn't make much sense to me, either Morales or Perry Kitchen. I think players who have made the decision, obviously Morales a bit before Perry Kitchen, but have made the decision to go try to have a go in Europe and are succeeding in doing so. And I think it makes sense to call them in and have them deputize as that potential defensive midfield option, as opposed to, say, Kyle Beckerman or an injured Jermaine Jones.
Has Caleb Stanko taken that role? I'm not really familiar enough with Caleb Stanko to know, is he a defensive midfielder? Is he an attacking midfielder? This was a surprise call-up for a lot of people, right? This is a guy who is or was in the Bundesliga with, I want to say Freiburg.
SC Freiburg.
And he's on loan somewhere in Switzerland.
Sort of. So, all right. So I've got some facts for you, a little bit of a quiz for you.
There's a quiz? There's a Caleb Stanko quiz? Yes.
23-year-old defensive midfielder, so he's defensive, on loan from SC Freiburg at FC Vaduz, which is playing in the Swiss Super League, but they are based in Liechtenstein. So they're playing in Switzerland, but they are not a Swiss team, which is a little bit strange.
That's interesting.
Right?
Were they just sort of too big for Liechtenstein? So they play in Switzerland?
Probably.
Yeah.
All right, so he is a dual national, which probably explains how he's able to play abroad. Between the United States and, can you guess the other country? Stanko is his last name.
Lithuanian? Latvian?
Polish.
Polish, okay.
Yes. He did leave a league game this weekend against FC Sion in the 32nd minute.
That's a bad minute to leave in.
It is, which means either he was playing horrendously or more likely was injured, and that's what the reports seem to indicate. So he may well be withdrawn from this team. But before that happens, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
He was born in the quote-unquote village of Holly. That's how Wikipedia describes it, which is located in what U.S. state that you care about?
Excuse me? Michigan.
There it is. Yep. It's like 10 miles south of Flint, it looks like.
Oh, wow.
Is where the village of Holly is located.
Nice.
Yes. So that's Caleb Stanko for
I still wouldn't drink the water.
Yeah, probably not.
So it looks like that Caleb Stanko got the spot that would have been for that Perry Kitchen defense midfielder, or that Alfredo Morales guy.
Yeah, and that's
or did Kyle Beckerman get the spot?
Or did Jermaine Jones get that spot? And I think,
Jermaine Jones.
And I think, especially looking at Jermaine Jones, that's where Alfredo Morales makes more sense to me, because he does what Jermaine Jones does.
Like
Jermaine Jones obviously does it to an insane degree and has the American flag tattoos and all that good stuff. But I think in terms of high energy, physical, will draw some fouls, will concede some fouls, will be feisty, will be nasty. I mean, that's what Alfredo Morales does for Ingolstadt, and that's what I think he could do for the United States, but, again, overlooked.
I've mentioned him a few times, but I feel like you haven't been interested in talking about him. Why is Kyle Beckerman on this roster? Because it looks to me like Klinsmann looked at Copa America Centenario and said, that mostly worked, I'm going to bring most of these guys back. And
I think that's the answer.
There's no interest in moving on from Beckerman, Wondolowski, etc.
Maybe not now. I think Klinsmann is doing a very good job of kind of kicking that can down the road a little bit, and like it keeps you like maybe before Copa Centenario, we're going to blow out some new players and see what happens. Maybe during Centenario, maybe after for those World Cup. Well, maybe once we've qualified for the Hex. Right. Well, maybe during the Hex. Maybe in the lead up to the World Cup. Yeah, it's like it does feel like it's getting pushed and pushed and pushed. But I think even if you don't want to see it that way, this is a very crucial series of games. The United States is second in the group.
We could be out of the World Cup by next Tuesday night.
If Guatemala beats Trinidad and Tobago and the United States beats the Goodfellas, then it's basically Trinidad on 10 points, the United States on 10 points, Guatemala on 9 points, with Guatemala playing Guatemala playing St. Vinny's and the United States playing TNT as the last games of that group. So it could be very tight. It's a possibility.
Right.
I mean, you kind of can't risk these things.
Seriously, right?
Right. And so with that, I think then you have that bring in Chris Wondolowski, who's a veteran. You bring in Kyle Beckerman, who's a steadying presence and can calm things down and play smart possession.
He's there to combat Trinidad, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
And the more we talk about it, the more I'm okay with it. Because I think every time you see a US roster, you want fresh, exciting names. You want to be excited about the future of American soccer. But the more you think about it and we talk it out like this, you want to win the games that are in front of you and make sure you're still in World Cup qualification.
Yeah. So I don't have nearly as much of a problem with Kyle Beckerman as I do with Jermaine Jones. And it's an awkward situation, right? Because Jermaine Jones killed himself when he is on the field for the United States.
Yeah.
Sometimes kills other people as a result.
Or at least punches them.
But hasn't played since July 4th, and I think has only played a couple competitive fixtures since like May for his club team. On top of that, it seems like been frustrating some Colorado fans. He's supposed to be rehabbing on like injury break, and yet I guess his Instagram feed is kind of constant photos that make it look very much like he's actually vacationing. And so I think some people would be frustrated.
Maybe Colorado is just a beautiful part of the world.
That well could be. I'm not sure he stayed in Colorado though. But I think like there was like from what I saw, some fans were annoyed that he's been called up to this squad and is playing to reports of training, but like didn't go to the away game against Real Salt Lake that he probably could have played in. So there's an element of why are you bringing in this guy who's injured, not potentially fully fit, to feature against teams that you need to beat?
I think Klinsmann sees Jermaine Jones as, see this guy's attitude, everybody copy that.
Yeah.
I think he wants him there all the time. It's almost like Megan Rapinoe going to the Olympics when she probably wasn't fit enough to play, but she sets the example, sets the tone, sets the rhythm, as Klinsmann would say. And he's too important not to have there.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think so with all of that said, there are other names that we could talk about not being included or be included now. John Brooks had to pull out, so you have Sasha Kleshton in there. That's one that I was curious to see if he would make it.
15 assists this season. I think MLS fans, New York Red Bulls fans, very excited to see Kleshton get a chance.
Most assists in the league. Yeah. So, I mean, I think leading Sebastian Giovinco by not much because Giovinco leads everything. But yeah, I think he has deserved that call-up, and I think with how many defenders are still on that roster, it makes sense to include Sasha Kleshton and maybe give him a return to the U.S. national team.
Benny Farhaber punches himself in the leg for talking out of school, maybe.
And you do have young, exciting players as well, because you do have Paul Arriola included in there, who I think has been doing good things in Liga MX and deserves that call up. Scored a goal recently,
so he might offer something down the right wing. Yeah, maybe
exactly.
Darlington Nagbe on this roster. I was impressed with him for Portland against Seattle. We talked about that on the previous show. We didn't talk about Nagbe in detail too much, but he did all the Nagbe things, right?
Yep.
Keeping the ball circulating, picking out smart passes, like drifting past people with the ball. Like I want to see him start a US game and do that.
Yeah,
I would be happy to see him do that against St. Vincent.
Yeah, and so I do think if Klinsmann wants to spin this roster one way, he can spin it as players who continue to deserve it, like Nagbe, like we talked about, but also players who have worked themselves into contention. So like Kleshton, like Paul Arriola, like Omar Gonzalez,
he's back.
Who's worked very hard to get back into contention. Same thing with Rubio Rubin, and even Jordan Morris to some extent.
Yeah.
So I think that all makes sense to me why those names are included. And really, at the end of the day, like I'm confused why Jermaine Jones is there, but I'm not frustrated because there's really no one else that I looked at as being like, why aren't they included? This is ridiculous.
What about Lyndon Gooch?
That's the only other one.
So we've watched him play 3 times now. We've watched him start for a Premier League team and do an unspectacular but very steady, hard-working, professional job. And it always seemed to me like the type of performance Klinsmann would like. We went back and we watched his game against Southampton. He played basically holding midfield in the Premier League for Sunderland. That seems like it should be enough to get you a look for the national team, especially when you are a dual national. He could play for Ireland. He could also play for Britain. Right?
And I think that's the element that is making people a little bit more stressed out, is that he
makes me
does
antsy.
have that eligibility.
Yeah.
He's playing for Sunderland, who, it's not so far away. You can just skip right over to Ireland and get his senior debut.
I mean, you'd have to go from east to west and then go, but yeah.
But has played for the U.S. at youth levels. So
U20, I think. Yeah.
Right, so would have to follow the one-time switch, I believe.
If you were to play for Ireland. Or,
yes.
Yeah.
But I would say, as to why he's not included, and that's why, he's the obvious name that maybe could have been, but I think he's still in that sort of Julian Green, Arjo situation. Not Argo, but Arjo. Where he's played himself into form, but it's still this kind of really weird time period for Sunderland where they're bringing in new faces, and maybe he leaves and all of a sudden they bring in some guys, and then he comes back and he's got to get back into training and he doesn't look as sharp. And maybe it's just you don't want to mess up a good thing. I would not be surprised if, given that he's not included, Klinsmann did call him. They did have that conversation about, you're still on our radar. You're very much included. We just, don't want to mess things up for you right now, but keep playing the way you are. You'll get a call up for maybe the November World Cup qualifiers. You
know what, as well? This may be one of those things where Caleb Stanko is the defensive midfielder. He was supposed to be called up for the Puerto Rico game before the Copa. Couldn't come for some reason. I think he was possibly injured. And maybe that's he was just next in line. So it almost doesn't matter what everybody else does, what Perry Kitchen does, what Lyndon Gooch does. It's Caleb Stanko's turn to be the young defensive midfielder included. And so they owed him one. So now he gets called up.
Unless he gets injured and then Lyndon Gooch comes in.
Yeah, well, maybe. But it's like sometimes people get an Oscar for the film that wasn't their best film, but they knew that they owed you one from before. This might be Caleb Stanko's call-up.
Yep.
In that sense,
yes. So with all that said, I am more or less excited to see this roster and see this team, because you also have youngsters in there. Ethan Horvath makes it as the third goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's the new third choice keeper, right?
Yeah, and as we talked about, Josie Altidore coming in very strong form. It will be nice to see Josie fit without hamstring injuries, putting in goals for Toronto, and looking to do so for the United States, to use the cliched phrase.
Final thing I want to talk about. Fabian Johnson, listed as a defender. We went back and watched...
So many comments about, a piece of me dies every time he's listed as a defender.
And I can sort of see it. We saw Fabian Johnson play for Borussia Mönchengladbach for a while against Bayer Leverkusen. So Mönchengladbach won 2-1. But Fabian Johnson didn't enter the game until the 60th minute. And he came on as essentially, I want to call it, right wing back, because they played a sort of 3-4-1-2. It's kind of interesting progressive formation. And he was somewhat involved in conceding a goal and somewhat involved in Mönchengladbach scoring a goal.
And I'm going to say that's overly positive and overly harsh.
Well, can we start with the conceding a goal?
Sure.
So he essentially gets double teamed.
I'd say triple teamed.
On his wing, right? Someone else comes outside of him and he sort of makes a lunge with, I think he goes with the wrong foot to try and block the cross. A more natural defender would have gone with his right foot to block the cross. Cross comes in, there's a bit of I think he comes back across, Leverkusen score, right? You weren't so worried about it.
Well, I wasn't worried about it for starters because of what you just described. Is cross comes in and then maybe it comes back across, and maybe it's there's still 4 or 5 Gladbach players who don't do their defensive jobs that I think are much more at fault. From an individual perspective, though, talking about Fabian Johnson, I think, in my opinion, it's just that he is sort of trying to hold up an attack while hold the offside line, and then he's got this guy streaming in the left back, I assume it was, who's completely unmarked, and so he has to worry about the guy on the ball, the potential guy on the ball, and this runner through. So he's got 3 people to keep an eye on. By the time that ball goes, he's been trying to hold them offside or onside, or the offside line, and now has to cover back, and he has to kind of throw that foot out. And for me, it just seems like he's doing anything he can to get a block on the ball, rather than have poor positioning and not have proper technique.
But he did not block the cross. There is that. Okay, then going the other way.
Yep.
Borussia Mönchengladbach's winner, he is involved in the build-up, but it's kind of minimal, right? There's a long ball out, and he kind of gets his chest there first. We think it's kind of hard to see if it's definitely.
I think it hits his shoulder and also hits a Leverkusen player at the same time. But then you make the argument that being there, putting that player under pressure, doesn't allow people to settle calmly.
Yeah.
And then I think what ends up happening is the ball falls, 2 Leverkusen players go for it, neither one gets it cleanly, and then it falls to Gladbach, who go and score.
Yeah.
So it's his presence is involved. Put it that way.
There's not a league where that's recorded as an assist, though, right?
There is not.
So good news.
Only the Fabian Johnson mental fantasy league. Yeah. In which case,
the good news is Johnson got 30 minutes in the Bundesliga, not injured, unlike John Brooks, who unfortunately had to bow out with a back injury.
Right.
After getting a win for Hertha Berlin. I think he's the player I'm going to miss the most.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's also the player the US will miss the most because he has become such a solid performer. But there are many center backs on that roster. And worth noting, I think the Fabian Johnson 30-minute cameo was that same, had a really long summer, recovering, we're giving him a little bit of a break, we're playing him into form.
Not dropped
less
as
than,
much
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think, unless there's anything else, that's all the US roster news. We will, of course, be back closer to the game. I want to say Thursday morning, we'll have a show out really specifically previewing USA against St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We'll know sort of who's fit and who's not, and we'll try and pick a lineup and somehow get Altidore, Morris, and Bobby Wood on the field together? Probably not, right?
It will be Altidore, and then it's tough to say if it will be Wood or Morris. I'm inclined to say it will be Wood.
Yeah,
but who knows?
Maybe Altidore and Wood. We'll talk in more detail on
I like this plan.
Later in the show, we're going to talk England. But first, Taylor, we have a sponsor for today's show, and it is the fine people at FUTCHI.
FUTCHI, makers of the engineered rebounder that combines soccer and squash with 100% fun.
100% fun, unless you lose.
/ competition, yeah.
So Taylor and I have been playing. If you haven't heard us talk about FUTCHI before, you set up the rebounder, you pull it taut, you play on grass, you have a court. One player strikes the ball against the net, it bounces, lands in the court. Next player has to return it, and you go back and forth like that until someone misses.
Yes.
Then you lose the point and get real mad, but then you brush it off and start again.
Yes. We've got a big holiday weekend coming up, a long holiday weekend coming up. I'm saying that it's the perfect thing to have if you want kind of like a fun, semi-competitive, but relaxed athletic event at your picnic or family outing or whatever you're doing. Go with some FUTCHI.
So I'm going to put the link to the video in the show notes so people can take a look at the last thing. The last time we played, we did 10 things we learned playing FUTCHI. And we started to get some suggestions for maybe how we could play a little differently. The suggestion we got was to try drinking while we played. Worth reminding people that that's illegal to do in public.
Yes.
Right?
We thought about doing it, and then we're like, oh, except then we'll get arrested or cited or fined or something.
And neither of us has a yard, right, that we can set FUTCHI up in.
Well, I have a yard. The problem is going to be that we're going to be going over the fence every single time if past is precedent, and then it's going to be chasing a soccer ball down an alleyway.
But we do want to hear people's suggestions for maybe ways to mix it up playing FUTCHI, things we could do differently that don't involve drinking.
Daryl blindfolded, Taylor not blindfolded? How about that?
How about the other way around?
I don't know about that one.
Like left foot only, headers only. We could, whatever you can think of. If you tweet them at us, use the hashtag TSSFUTCHI, FUTCHI. Let us know ways we can mix it up playing FUTCHI.
Because I like the idea of doing some sort of, like, we have all the ideas thrown into a hat, and then before, like, each one, we just have to pull one out and be like, this time it's left foot only. Oh, boy.
Like we're an improv troupe.
Yeah, or is it Foursquare, where the king gets to make all the rules and decide different things whenever they so choose? Yeah, just like that.
So yeah, let us know ways to mix it up playing FUTCHI. Use hashtag TSSFUTCHI, and we will honour as many as are possible.
And if people would rather play FUTCHI than give us ideas for how to play FUTCHI, what can they do, Mr. Grove?
You go to FUTCHI.com, FUTCHI.com. Use the coupon code TOTALSOCCER, all one word, all lowercase, no spacing, for 15% off at checkout. Go to FUTCHI.com, TOTALSOCCER, all one word, 15% off.
Beautiful. Nicely done, Mr. Grove.
And the website again is FUTCHI.com. And thank you to FUTCHI for their long-term sponsorship of the Total Soccer Show. We love you, FUTCHI.
We do. We also love Sam Allardyce.
Yes, I'm on board. Yes. So, new England manager Sam Allardyce has named his first England squad.
Every time I think he's managing the Revolution for a second. Or the Patriots, one or the other.
Allardyce has named 23 players for the World Cup qualifier. European World Cup qualifying starts this coming weekend away to Slovakia on Sunday. It's going to be a noon Eastern kickoff away to Slovakia on Sunday.
How you feeling, Mr. Grove?
I
excited?
feel good. I kind of like this squad.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there are no major news items, right? Like Wayne Rooney's in there. Wayne Rooney is now officially going to be captain. There's no big omissions.
Where have you parked the hype train for this weekend?
Oh, it's what I used to get here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, but where is it going to be while you watch them play? Because the Ross Barkley hype train doesn't apply to this squad.
So, yeah, Ross Barkley, Allardyce said it was the toughest decision he had to make was to leave Barkley out of the team. And in some ways, even though I think if you've listened to the show, you know I'm very much on the Barkley hype train, I'm a big Barkley fan, I kind of appreciate that he hasn't just like squeezed him in because he likes him. It seems like Allardyce has made tough decisions in a lot of spots, and the creative midfielder role, at the attacking midfielder role, seems to be Wayne Rooney first choice for it, Dele Alli second choice for it, Ross Barkley third choice for it. So why squeeze all of them in there?
Yeah.
Didn't he say in his press conference, essentially I've got my team and I've got a spare in each position?
Yep.
Yeah.
It seems to be the way he's approaching it. And it's also probably a pretty smart way of justifying it. Because then I think he'll still get some stick for Wayne Rooney, and Wayne Rooney needs to be dropped or Wayne Rooney needs to retire. But you're always going to call Wayne Rooney, I think. You're going to call Dele Alli. So then it makes sense to me. Like, yeah, if you're only choosing two, it's going to be those two.
Absolutely. And it speaks to the pragmatism, I think, of Sam Allardyce that he's doing it this way.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, another thing that speaks to pragmatism is Jack Wilshere not included. And I think that's fair given the start to the season he's had, where he hasn't been I don't think he started any games.
And is available on loan at this point.
Is that right?
Is the newest rumor. Yeah.
You mentioned this before we started recording. That's, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe Wolves?
Yeah, you never know. But I think if that's his current situation, then it would be very hard for Allardyce to be like, I'm bringing people in who are in the best run of form and the most confident, and also this guy who could be available on a loan.
Right, yeah. What else jumps out to you, Taylor? Because otherwise it's going to be me banging on about the England roster.
I'd say probably Luke Shaw is the big one. His return to the national team.
It's not a shock, but it's a positive thing if you're an England fan.
Yeah, I mean, he had the horrific leg break last season. To see him come back, to see him how involved he is in the Manchester United attack, it maybe makes you wonder how involved he'll be in the English attack, how involved he could have been at the Euros. Had he been fit, of course he wasn't, but now he is. So nice to see him back.
He'll offer some danger down the left for England as well. Speaking of Manchester United players, I think there was an attempt in the English media to make a big stink about Marcus Rashford. So he was included in the under-21 squad. Yeah, dropped. And then he scored that late winner for United. And now there's already a little story bubbling away about how Allardyce has made a mistake.
Yeah, he hasn't.
Please explain.
Well, because
I agree with you, but I want to hear your reasoning.
He's been not included so that he can play for the under-21s, where he'll either start or get way more playing time than he would, given that Allardyce has only named 3 forwards, and those forwards are Harry Kane, Daniel Sturridge, and Jamie Vardy. Rashford's good, but at this point he's not starting over any one of them.
And even all of those probably won't play. Someone will miss out from those guys. Yeah.
So it makes sense, and especially because when this roster was really being in serious consideration, Rashford still hadn't played for Man United.
When the under-21s were announced, he had not played for United. Yeah.
And is still either a teenager or just barely not a teenager. So it's still sort of why, and that's what I think Sam Allardyce said, is we don't want to just lump too much pressure on him too early. We want him to develop. We want him to get comfortable in the system. It made more sense to me. Yep. And then again, he's explained why he's chosen the players he has for the positions he has. It would make sense, sort of like shoehorning in Ross Barkley. I don't think it would make sense to shoehorn in Marcus Rashford.
It also, to me, underlines how the English media massively undervalues the under-21s and does the whole system a disservice in doing so, right? If you make it sound like it's a punishment and it's a terrible idea to be dropped down there, then suddenly you make it a worse thing for a player to be selected. It's kind of an honour to be selected for the under-21s. Yeah, right?
I think it's just people trying to sell papers, people trying to stir up controversy, because then it becomes Allardyce isn't choosing youth, he's choosing the players that he likes, and he's choosing older players, and it becomes Jose Mourinho isn't giving young players a chance, and England is suffering for it.
Right.
Which I think is a bit of an exaggeration at this point.
And actually, this roster's so pragmatic. Weirdly, it's so low-key and pragmatic, it's got me excited. Which is a weird paradox that's happening.
Yeah. I mean, there are still some new names in there.
Yeah.
You've got Michael Antonio from West Ham has made this. Danny Drinkwater was obviously in the provisional Euro roster, but is in this squad and has signed a contract renewal and is a good defensive midfield option.
And played that through ball for Jamie Vardy at the weekend. That
sure did.
We like the look of very much so.
He sure did.
So Antonio, that's an interesting inclusion, right? Nobody saw that coming, I don't think. We went back and checked his time at West Ham. did not cross over with Allardyce's time at West Ham.
I don't believe so, yeah.
There's a chance maybe Allardyce was like part of the team that was looking at him, scouting him. Because when Allardyce talked about why he was in the squad, he said, I like what he's done at every level. Meaning, as he was coming up the leagues before he joined West Ham, he liked what he saw there.
Yeah.
And he also said he offers good delivery and pops up with a goal, which he did this weekend.
He did.
Even though West Ham lost to Man City, Antonio was there, I think, with a headed goal.
Yeah, again, I think that's another situation that the English press probably weren't thrilled about. Because it would have been way easier to just like lampoon that decision if Antonio did nothing, but then he comes in and scores and looks solid for West Ham.
Yeah.
It kind of justifies the inclusion.
I think he scored the week before as well.
He's decent.
It's hard not to,
to
include. And he's got that Homer Simpson celebration in his back pocket. So yeah, how can you not include someone who's got that?
One player who has not been scoring too many goals is Joe Hart. We should probably talk about him. Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't been playing.
He has not. Well, he isn't. Well, yeah, not so much.
I was joking that's the only reason.
Yeah. And actually, it leads to a question we had from Chris Bentley. It says, with rumors of Torino being interested in one Joe Hart, I think at this point those rumors are confirmed. I think he is going to Torino.
On loan or permanent?
I think permanent. I'm not sure if it's been the financials have been released, but it's Gianluca Di Marzio, who's been very accurate with his England to Italy and vice versa transfer rumors this summer. He's reporting it as a done deal, so I'm saying it's a done deal.
Okay.
Chris says he began to hope that this is the move he makes. Probably won't because they can't match his wages, so maybe it seems like they will. My question, says Chris, is do you agree that England would be a better national team if more players would move abroad and be exposed to different leagues, styles, and tactics?
The short answer is yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think the more interesting way to talk about it is why that would make them a better team and also why it doesn't happen more. Okay. So let's start with why it would make them a better team. First,
I don't know if it would, to be honest.
Oh, so you disagree?
It's not. Well, I agree and I disagree. What I would say is that most of the players on this list are playing regularly for their club. And their clubs are at varying degrees in the Premier League, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that it's not as though these guys are not getting first team football, but they're sitting at a big club, or their careers are idling while they wait to get some first team football.
Yeah, but that's not what Chris means. He means more like, would it be better for the England players to go abroad and have different cultural and tactical experiences, and then you get a different idea of how soccer is played around the world, rather than all being concentrated in the Premier League.
Right, and my point is that these guys are all playing for clubs where they fit right now. You can't say that, it might be great for them to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona or Atletico Madrid or, Villarreal, Valencia, whoever, but you can't guarantee that it's going to work. You can't guarantee that they're going to fit in the system. So I guess I just feel like there's this idea that they need to move abroad to get more experience to try different things. Those new experiences and different things might not be great for them.
This is true, but okay, let's not think about it too narrowly of just these England players. I think as a culture, if England players were sort of spread far and wide, then you get more stuff out there and you bring back new ideas.
That I do not disagree with, and I think Eric Dyer is a key example of that, who developed playing in Portugal, had different experiences, had a different background, and that informs the way he plays soccer, I would say. He comes from a different experience. It helps him be a different type of player.
The other thing I always think about is, there's always a panic about how few English players are starting in the Premier League. It tends to be like 30% of players in the Premier League are English, right? And how low that is compared to other national teams. Yep. Even if you're, say, in La Liga, if you did the calculation, I don't know what it is, of Spanish players, you can do that. And then you've also got all your other players playing elsewhere. So essentially you can have more potential internationals playing first-team football in top-level divisions all around Europe instead of in just one league. It leads to actually having more players.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can spread farther, and then you have more options.
And that's where I would say, I don't know if it helps the national team itself, but I think it helps the player pool as a whole. Because if you have those guys who are maybe not making it in the Premier League or not making it in the Premier League the way they would like, to go to France, to go to Portugal, to go to Spain, Germany, wherever, rather than be I'll go to the Championship, or I'll sit on Man City's bench. That's where I think that difference could be very useful, because it becomes less of a thing. It becomes just a thing you do, as opposed to can you believe Joe Cole went to France?
Yeah.
It's
which actually did happen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then
I can't believe he went to Tampa.
And then everybody freaked out, because it was wow, what's this guy doing playing in a different league that's so different and weird? And
I think there's definitely a cultural thing where English people sort of don't travel well, frankly. Right? I mean, we're a tiny island and we're scared of... there's a lot of water between us.
Yeah,
and
if only you guys had a history of navigating those waters on a consistent basis.
We do, but most people didn't do that, right?
That's
Still, if you think of the majority of English people, most of them weren't sailors. Most of them stayed in a tiny island and were just looking around for invaders. And then the other thing is...
I don't realize that's how England worked.
The other thing is the money's in the Premier League.
This is true.
Like, if you can be like third choice left back at a Premier League team and make an absolute fortune. You could be first choice left back at a mid-table French team and not make an absolute fortune.
This is true.
You could even go down to the Championship and still make good money.
Also
I think there's
true.
no financial incentive to leave England unless you're going to Juventus, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid.
Which are whole other countries, to be fair.
As Ian Rush famously said. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. That's what I was paraphrasing. So, I mean, in the end, I would say that, I agree with Chris that if you send more players abroad...
You deepen the player pool.
You deepen the player pool.
It, yeah.
But I would, that's where, like... But maybe you don't need to send Wayne Rooney to Inter Milan just so he plays in Italy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say these guys, right? Because
Yeah.
these guys have got it down. I'd say the next generation of players maybe could have gone somewhere else. Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
What else haven't we talked
Actually,
about this?
I would say, though, I do wonder how active foreign scouting networks are in England. Because I imagine it's a small island, as you've just pointed out, and you've got a lot of professional soccer teams in that country. I wonder if kind of Spanish clubs, German clubs are like, we're not going to get anybody. So there's no point in sending people.
It would be easy to travel around and look at players, but I think it'd be very hard to offer them a financial package that's worth leaving England for.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you got to teach them Spanish.
So I think it makes exactly. We know how well that's going to go. So maybe it makes more sense just to kind of wait until you know they're proven entities, and then you make an offer for them. If you're a big club with big pockets.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to keep.
It's pretty much what has to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe Hart's Torino is fascinating in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's a gutsy decision because if you look around the league, I mean, we did this a couple days ago. There's no obvious suitors for him aside from mid-lower table Premier League clubs and maybe even a championship club.
And this keeps his England place as well. If he's playing regularly in Serie A, that's a fascinating experience. And he kind of has not much competition for that starting spot.
Yeah.
Right? Unless things go really wrong.
I really thought the most likely destination was going to be Newcastle on loan. That's what I thought was going to start. Yeah, because they've sent Tim Krul back to Ajax, and it's been that weird goalkeeper merry-go-round that's happened. And so maybe he would complete that. And then it really would be a merry-go-round because it would be Claudio Bravo moving from Barcelona to Man City. Then Jesper Cillessen moving from Ajax to Barcelona. Tim Krul moving from Newcastle to Ajax. And then you'd have Joe Hart moving from Man City to Newcastle. Perfect.
And the carney would pull the lever and just stop on the carousel.
Exactly.
So it's done. Everybody's good.
And I'm glad he didn't do that because I think he will get a different experience, get a different idea of what's out there, and then maybe come back and maybe not. Maybe he stays in Italy.
And if Joe Hart ever sees Andrea Pirlo again, he can compliment him in Italian.
Yes.
Instead of just English swear words about how good his free kick was. Anything else stand out here? I'm thinking maybe Theo Walcott's back in the squad. I thought it was crazy to leave him out to begin with because I'm a big Theo Walcott fan. I can see this England team having like Walcott down the right wing, Raheem Sterling down the left wing.
That's the one that I wanted to talk about.
Suddenly that's really exciting.
Yeah, because it's weird to have a Raheem Sterling in form. It's been a while. It's been more of like, what is he doing? Why is he in here? He should not be starting. Yep. Raheem Sterling seems very much rejuvenated under Pep Guardiola, and I'm excited to see a rejuvenated Raheem Sterling starting for England, playing for England.
So you may see that on Sunday, noon Eastern. It is away to Slovakia, not Czechoslovakia. That no longer exists.
Sure doesn't. So that's United States and England, but we have not yet done the Scouting Network.
Oh yeah, Total Soccer Scouting Network. We have more reports for you today coming in from the Scouting Network.
Coming in hot.
Okay, Taylor, get us started. Who've we got? What's going on?
Up first, we've got Juan Carlos Salas scouting Mallory Pugh.
Oh, yeah.
Juan Carlos says that she was called up by the U20s for the Women's NTC Invitational, which is essentially a mini tournament in preparation for the U20 World Cup later this year. Mallory will likely miss out on the senior team's upcoming friendlies as a result. She may also miss out on UCLA. We've had reports that she may have deferred, that she might be waiting. Maybe she redshirts, which is kind of an absurd concept to think about. We shall see what happens, and I'm sure Juan Carlos will let us know.
Oh, because she's going to go play in the U20 World Cup and she'll miss the start of the college season for UCLA.
She already has, so yeah.
Oh, wow. It kind of sucks for UCLA.
Yep.
To get, she would have been the best player in women's college soccer, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But they maybe get her next year.
Yep, maybe. But more on...
Look out, rest of college soccer.
Yes. Moving away from college soccer, should we talk a little more Premier League, surprisingly?
It's my favourite.
It is.
Jeff Amelin is scouting Patrick Bamford. And Jeff, I'm sorry, I've put you through a year of hell by assigning you Patrick Bamford. Jeff says Patrick has officially gone on a season-long loan to Burnley, where he should, says Jeff, be able to compete for a spot.
Jeff also added "Hooray Premier League" with an exclamation point.
So yeah, if you didn't know this, Patrick Bamford is a Chelsea player, was on loan at Middlesbrough a couple of seasons ago, did amazing things in the Championship. I predicted he would then score 10 goals in the Premier League. That didn't happen. Went on loan to Norwich, barely played. I think had a bit of a grumble about being on loan there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it was at Palace, came back, went on loan to Norwich, came back.
That was it, yeah. And now he's on loan at Burnley.
Yep.
Let's hope this goes better. Jeff, please cross your fingers. Cross everything.
Yep. Another report from Stephen Haller, scouting Munir El-Haddadi, says the youngster is set for a season-long loan to Celta Vigo.
Wait, who's this? Oh, he plays for Munir, Barcelona.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He was originally slated to head to Tottenham, but preferred to stay in La Liga. He signed an extension with Barcelona earlier this year, so this seems like a move to get him first-team minutes, not a move to move him on to a different club.
Fair enough. You can't get enough Munir in your life, right?
You sure cannot.
So hopefully, we'll get to see him play a bit.
And final report, less of happy news, comes from Michael Hartman, scouting Junior Flores.
Yeah.
Michael sent a longer report that he sums up with, Flores is now an injured commodity, getting no playing time with BVB's U23s when he is healthy, with little no interest from either of his potential national teams. So all in all, it's not the most glowing prospect to report.
I thought Junior Flores was American.
Junior Flores is American, but is eligible for El Salvador, I believe.
And they're not interested either.
Well, there's been some talk, but it sounds like he has said he was contacted by like El Salvador FC, I guess, which is a website. So saith Michael Hartman.
Yeah.
And essentially said like, I'm going to rehab and see how they do in this round, and if they make it to the next round of the Hex, then we'll see where we are. But for now, he's out there.
Oh dear.
In the world.
Someone who's doing
with
well
a bad ankle
is Junior Flores' former coach, David Wagner.
Yeah.
Who is German-American and is coaching Huddersfield. He's currently top of the Championship. There is a German-American with US national team caps, I think he played 8 times, who is coaching a team and is top of the Championship in England.
Yep, and it's the American part that got him there.
That's probably true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I know this because they beat Wolves this past weekend, and a former Wolves player, Van La Parra, scored the goal.
And we all know that guy that you just said, so sure.
Dutch people will. But worth keeping an eye on. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
A German American to be top of Championship, maybe head into the Premier League.
Yeah, we did the list, right? We've got Las Palmas are top of La Liga.
Yep.
There's an American employed somewhere in there.
Yep.
So we've got that one. We've got Bayern Munich. I'm assuming top of the table on goal difference. Julian Green.
I think so, yeah.
In that squad. So an American top of the Bundesliga. Then we've got American top of the Championship.
If PSG go top in Ligue 1, which they either have done or will do at some point, they got Timothy Weah.
They lost to Monaco this weekend, 3-1 to Monaco, which is...
All right, we'll give it time.
One of my initial notes was, lock up your Hazards, lock up your Rashfords, because PSG are coming calling.
Oh, that's the punch that the transfer window needed, right? It's a PSG defeat.
Yep. Yeah, beIN Sport have to update their star player montage somehow. You got to drop Zlatan, which they still feature, and I think Jurgen Klopp as well is in there. They got to drop him. They got to find the new PSG star,
which is weird because Jurgen Klopp was never on beIN Sport.
Not sure what that was.
I think they're selling. They're selling. Always be selling. Speaking of, if you would like to contribute to the future of the Total Soccer Show, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. We will add you to the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network and we will assign you a player. But more importantly, you will be supporting TSS and helping us to make more shows. We plan to keep doing this for as long as possible.
We sure do. Unfortunately, Daryl won't be doing it with any coffee.
Why is that?
Because Daryl's always selling. Daryl's not closing. And coffee is for closers.
I already have a set of steak knives, so I'm fine. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We've got a special show coming for you on Wednesday with the return of Laura Coates and a whole show of trivia and fun.
Hooray!
And then on Thursday, we'll have the proper previews of USA versus St. Vincent and England versus Slovakia. Until then, it is goodbye from us.